He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on Tab Touch.
Hey, Luke!
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff!
Thanks, Gene.
You got the touch! You got the touch! You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tab Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle.
Ellis fumbled the ball. 2 on the shot clock. Throws up a prayer. Yes! As he was falling to the ground, it's a 3. He shot it literally from the hip.
Definitely a highlight.
Here come the Billikens. 4 on 2. McCall. Ellis. Left corner.
We missing out.
Bang! From way down under. Cody Ellis. Reddick brings low out away from the best. Stolen away by Cody Ellis. One man to beat. To the hole. He's fouled. Layup. Good. Whistle foul. Count the best.
Ellis for the reverse. Through fingertips. What a move. Ellis drops in a bomb. I love seeing Cody Ellis coming out feeling good.
Ellis. Cody Ellis. Ellis. Pull-up jumper. Cody Ellis. Bang. Cody Ellis, can he stand and deliver? Cody Ellis.
Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle for another week, and we're 4 rounds down already in the NBL season, Cody. It feels like it was only last week we were doing our season previews and looking forward to the season, but a month into it already, and boy, there's plenty more to talk about. This is going to be another jam-packed hour. Tasmania JackJumpers, we've loved their defense the last 2 years, but they've got plenty of firepower this year, Cody. Melbourne United still looking pretty ominous. It's good to see the Adelaide 36ers respond 48 hours after another disappointing loss, but can't quite say the same at the Perth Wildcats, the Brisbane Bullets and the Illawarra Hawks. Got some fascinating big men discussion to have on this show as well, Cody. We've got some former NBL stars now on the free market from the NBA, which has been surprising over the last week leading into the NBA season. We're here thanks to Hoops 7 and Tab Touch. I'm Chris Pike, but the man you've all tuned in to hear from, the former Illawarra Hawks, the former Sydney Kings, the former Warwick Senators captain, Cody Ellis. Thanks for joining me.
Mate, yeah, big weekend of basketball.
Yes.
You know, I feel like we say it every week, but look, a couple of teams kind of separating themselves from the pack again, further from both directions, at top and bottom. So, lot to talk about and lot to unpack, but it should be a good show.
Sometimes when we're preparing for a show, we wonder, how are we going to fill up an hour?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, you put down the things we've got to talk about, we start talking, and this is going to be one of those weeks where it's actually going to be tough to jam it into an hour. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. There is. There's lots going on, and that's good. It's what you want.
Absolutely. We're here thanks to Hoop 7, so if you're in Perth at any point, head to the store on Murray Street. It just continues to grow, Cody, and head to hoop7.com.au if you're anywhere else. As you get closer to Christmas, do you start to think about things for Chase?
Oh, I've got to. Yeah, absolutely. Try and get in early, but yeah, no, that's Hoop 7 will certainly be a stop for me for chasing.
Having fun trying to help people find some winners thanks to Tab Touch as well?
Trying to. Look, there's been a few that have been pretty close. I think 1 or 2 have come off, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's been fun. It's a whole new realm for me, having never been able to bet on basketball. So, it's been a lot of fun.
Even the exclusives we can now come up with to offer. So if you head to the Tab Touch app or tabtouch.com.au, you can find our exclusives, and we're basically creating bets out of nothing, which is good fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun, and we appreciate the guys at Tab Touch for letting us do that and have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah. All right, Cody, let's get stuck straight into the action, and I will give a shout out to our third co-host, or maybe you'll end up becoming our mascot, Elvis. Yeah. He's had a tough week losing his little chompers, so he doesn't have quite the same little sharp bite anymore, and he's struggling to carry his little toys around. But hello to Elvis, and if you hear some noise in the background, that's who it'll be, and causing mischief. I think he might have hit the wall a little bit.
He's passed out. He's done the run around the house when I came in, and I think he's ready to hit the hay, which is good.
To be fair, I think this is his favourite time of the week when you turn up. But he's hit the wall quickly. So hello to Elvis. But let's start with the Tasmania JackJumpers, Cody. They've been such a hard team to play against the last 2 years. So hard to score against, so defensively minded, so physical. But this year, they're scoring. They've added firepower. Jordon Crawford is an absolutely offensive weapon, but so is Majuk Deng. I think he was an underrated signing, and I watched him throughout the NBL 1 North season and couldn't believe no one wanted him.
Yeah.
In the end, Scott Roth came calling and brought him in, and he's added 10 points a game, but Milton Doyle's still doing what he's doing. Jack McVeigh's doing what he's doing. But the addition of Jordon Crawford and then, someone like Anthony Drimmick as well, and especially against the Sydney Kings, their 3 scoring stars all performed, but they had so many points off the bench as well. They're an offensive, dangerous team right now too.
Well, they are. And look, that's kind of been the one thing that they've been missing is that extra scoring punch. They kind of had that a little bit in their first year, but just not quite enough of it.
Yeah.
They've got 2 legit MVP candidates right now, in Crawford and Doyle. And
I think last year they did miss Josh Adams, didn't they? Josh Adams was that little bit of a scoring X factor.
Yeah, for sure. And look, they've certainly found that in Jordon Crawford. Yeah. And the explosion that happened in the first few minutes of the fourth quarter against
14
Sydney.
Straight points he scored on his own.
Unreal.
Yeah.
It was unreal, hitting kind of step back threes, and then they kind of left him wide open, and then his little floater in the middle, and he just took over and he just turned that game on its head and kind of put it to sleep in about a 2 or 3 minute stretch. Yeah, look, they've certainly got the firepower this year. I mean, Clint Steindl came in off the bench and was unreal. Hit some big shots. When momentum was starting to swing Sydney's way. Look, McVeigh's going to do what he does. Deng, again, he's a veteran of the league.
Yeah.
He understands the league. He knows how to be successful in the league. And, getting him down low, his little baseline fadeaway is almost unguardable. You can't get to it because his arms are so long and he's fading away.
His wingspan must be 7'4".
It's massive. It's a long wingspan. Yeah. So, like you mentioned, you got a guy like Anthony Drimmick who hasn't found his feet yet. So it's scary when you think about it. That the fact that they're scoring 91 points a game for a defensive unit is very impressive.
Yeah, 105 points against Sydney, their highest ever score, and only a couple of weeks ago 103 was their second highest. They had 95 in the first game of the season when they didn't play great, and they lost to the Wildcats. So, it's not a one-off thing. Even though the Kings lost to them on Sunday, I feel like we talked about last week, everything that we thought last week was reinforced where I think Tasmania, Melbourne and Sydney are still a fair way ahead of the rest.
Oh, they absolutely are. And look, I don't think Sydney was fantastic in this game against the JackJumpers.
But still had a chance.
Still had their chances, right? And then, again, you throw in DJ Hogue, which hopefully is in this week against his former team.
And if Jalen Galloway doesn't get hurt as well.
Yeah. So, look, I think you're right. Those 3 teams are well and truly ahead of everyone. And... at this point, it's kind of teams fighting for that 4th spot and then the play-in game, last 2 spots. So they're fun to watch. JackJumpers are fun to watch.
Yes. Let's talk about the big man. A lot to get through. And there was some great performances by some of them. Alan Williams' return was terrific and goes to show what a dominant presence he can be and how good it is to watch a big guy that has a game that's an inside game. We don't have many guys with a post game in this league. So what he did in both games, firstly against Adelaide, 15 points, 13 rebounds, his first game back, had a lot of fun, and then 21.6 rebounds against Brisbane. And similar to Rob Lowe last week, he had a lot of fun doing it in the face of Rocco Zikarsky, which is a learning curve for the 17-year-old. Let's start with Big Sauce. How good was it to see him back?
Oh, it's awesome. And, he kind of changes that team a lot.
Yes.
I think he's really going to help out. And he's one of those guys that you could throw on any team in the league and they'd just automatically be a better team. Yeah. Geez, he loved a celebration over the weekend, though, didn't he? Goodness me! I think
every
bucket he brought out something different, which is funny. And look, it seems to be a thing a bit around the league. There's a few guys every time they make a bucket, they throw in some sort of celebration. But no, look, it was awesome to see him back on the floor, and I'm sure he's been a welcome addition to the squad.
What about the 48 hours that Isaac Humphries had? It felt like against the Phoenix on Thursday night that CJ Bruton lost complete confidence in him and didn't play him. He only played 15 minutes, had 2 points and 3 rebounds. That was in that game against Williams and the Phoenix. We'll get to Adelaide and I guess the soul searching they did in between the games, but he was the key to backing up and responding against the Wildcats on Saturday night. I kind of wonder how much the Wildcats might have made him look a little bit better than perhaps he is, but full credit to Isaac for responding. 26 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 12 of 17 shooting. He was the difference in that game. He was a unstoppable force. How tough is it to go from a poor game on a Thursday night to then be a match winner on Saturday?
Oh, it's tough. It's very tough to do. You know, you can kind of mope around and just have your head down and all that sort of stuff if you come out and you do have a game like you did against South East Melbourne. And you're right. Look, it seemed like CJ kind of lost his faith in him, or whether it was he just didn't like the matchup.
Yeah.
Isaac was clearly frustrated in that game against South East. You could see it on the court. You know, I think you said he had 2 points, 3 rebounds, but I think he only had 2 or 3 shots.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good enough. You know, he's a marquee big man in this league, and he's one of the best big men, and he needs to be a focal point. We saw that against Perth, and look what he did. Yeah. You know, he should be a guy, especially on this team, he should be a guy averaging 20 and 10. Yeah. You know, or at least close to it. Like,
or getting enough touches to put up those numbers at least.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And look, he's talented enough to be able to do that. Yeah. So, you know, I think he certainly went to town on Perth. He did that. I think, you know, obviously matchups are a big thing. You know, it's tough, and he does find himself in foul trouble every now and then. Yeah. You know, which, I mean, so does everyone in the league. I mean, this round was so whistle heavy throughout the entire round that it was kind of frustrating. Yeah. But he's a game changer for them, and I think for them to kind of take that step forward, while DJ's been an awesome in for them, I still think Isaac needs to be a focal point.
Oh, he makes someone like DJ better as well, because if he's a post presence, he can kick it out to DJ if you have to double him.
Well, that's it. You know, I think he's only going to make everyone else better. Yeah. And then you got Wiley crashing the boards and all that fun stuff as well. So, look, I think they've got their chances to be decent, but you know, I do think that he needs to be that focal point for them.
Yeah, I mean, the key is if they can do it against a better defensive team than the Wildcats, which we'll get to shortly. As good as those two big men were, it's frustrating watching big men in the league right now because it feels like they're not allowed to play defense. We were sitting here when we were recording last week watching Mango Madiang play against the Utah Jazz and watching what he can do defensively when he's allowed to. He can be such a presence with his interior defense, such a great shot blocker. But we watched one of his blocks against the Jazz last week, and we thought that exact same block in the NBL would be called a foul. Yep. And that's exactly what happened. He didn't even last 8 minutes against Melbourne United on Sunday, and before picking up his 5 fouls. Marcus Lee in a similar situation when he fouled out in just 18 minutes as well. How frustrating would it be for a big man that you get told by your coach to protect the rim, be a shot blocker and go for the shots, but anytime you have the slightest bit of contact, you get called for a foul and you can't stay on the court. How tough is it?
Yeah, it is tough. And look, it's one of those things that the league needs to start figuring out how to ref verticality, right? You know, I think it is a lot tougher because it's something that happens nearly every play in the NBA, right? Yeah. It doesn't happen too often here because we don't have those same athletes. But look, I think with Mango, it was tough because there was a couple plays there where he was just not disciplined, right? Off his feet. And I think Marcus Lee is similar.
No, they do have some silly fouls, no doubt. Reaching in fouls from a big guy is silly, but at the same time, you can compensate for that if you're not called for the other ones. And you don't pick up the 5 fouls if you're only getting a couple of those silly ones a game.
No, definitely. I totally agree. They've also got to try and adapt. And it's extremely frustrating, and especially as someone watching, it's frustrating too. Because you see that kind of stuff and then you get blown for a foul, and it seems very inconsistent, which again is the frustrating part for us watching, but as someone who's kind of been through that, it's frustrating as a player because it's hard to adjust to. Big thing for especially those two guys, I think they don't need to leave their feet, you know, and that's where they get, you know, at least 1 or 2 of their fouls a game is leaving their feet to try and block a shot, right? They're both tall enough with big enough arm spans that they could sit there and stand straight up. Yeah. You're going to change the shot.
And if you let the guy run into you.
You're going to change a shot. It's not all about getting that blocked shot, right? You know, I think last year in the NBA, you know, best athletes in the world, league leader was, I think it was Jaren Jackson maybe at 3 a game. Yeah. And that's high. 3 for a whole game. That's not a whole lot, you know? So it's not always about getting that block. It's about changing the shot. Yeah. And I think that's where, especially those two, need to kind of adjust that little bit. but it'd be nice to be able to see some blocks and all that sort of stuff and let them play a bit and kind of use their size to an advantage, because that's just what it is. It's their advantage.
We've talked about the frustration for Aron Baynes as well. He's getting similar calls against him when he's playing. In the bigger picture, would it affect big guys wanting to play in the NBL, the fact that if they look into it and realise that the strengths of their game, they might not actually be able to show it?
Yeah, a little bit. And, that's one thing about playing internationally, though, right? Is you've got to adjust to the league. Yeah. It's a different league. It's ref differently, and everyone knows that. So yeah, look, I think the adjustments are the big thing, and not letting it get to you, not letting that those same fouls happen every single week, and making sure that you can stay on the court for your team. Yeah.
Important for your selection as well in the best defensive player. You need Mango to be able to stay on the court.
So I think that's I think that selection for me, unfortunately, is gone already.
I actually don't think so. I actually think he could be the best defensive player in the league, clearly. He just needs to be allowed to.
Yeah. And look, it is what it is. It'll be interesting to see how we go moving forward the next couple of weeks, because, certainly on social media this weekend was a lot about how many whistles were blown throughout the whole week.
I think it was the Tasmania-Sydney game. There was 60 foul shots between them. Yeah. We don't want to see that many whistles.
No, I think there was something like 48 or 49 fouls called throughout the game. And that's, for a game that was really good and hyped up and, game of the round for sure, it was just so stop-start.
Yeah, 61 foul shots that they took between them.
That's a lot. That's too many. We don't need to see that. But it's tough. It's tough because of how the league is now. There's so much talent, so much IQ throughout the whole league that people know how to draw that foul. Yeah. So, yeah, look, it's tough, but hopefully we see a bit of a tighter whistle.
Before we take our first break and get to a Perth Wildcats discussion, which I'm sure a lot of people are interested to see and hear your take on, Cody, let's take a positive look at the Adelaide 36ers. You were concerned about them, and all of those concerns were well and truly justified with what we saw against the South East Melbourne Phoenix on Thursday night, where they were very disappointing on their home floor. They didn't fire a shot at all to lose to the Phoenix, and never looked like winning that game. Gave up 100 points, and after that, the players got together on the Friday, had a players' meeting. Can you take us inside what a players' meeting like that would be like when your season is slipping away? You're playing poorly, your body language looks poor, everything's going against you. What sort of things would have they discussed on that Friday?
Oh, everything. It's a good thing, because if you've got the right people amongst the group, which I think, from the outside looking in, they've got the right people in the group, right? They're all professionals, they all understand, right? So you get into a players meeting and you just kind of put everything out there. You call people out. It's nothing personal. None of that stuff is personal, but it's all right. We need, if we're going to be successful, Isaac, you need to do this. Wiley, this needs to happen. DJ, this needs to happen. It's just something that it's kind of. It's early in the season for that, but when you start the way they did, I think it was timed perfectly, and
1-5 at that point.
Yeah, it was timed perfectly for them, and DJ coming in, and I think he was the one that called it, I think worked well for him. And it's something that, as that guy just slotting in late, not being there pre-season and only being there for the past couple of weeks, I guess holding everyone accountable as well.
I guess having seen what a winning culture is like the last 2 years as well would have helped him have that perspective.
Yeah, and that kind of carries a bit of weight too into those meetings. You do listen to those guys who have been there, done that, been around that winning culture and been successful, and DJ is certainly that. So look, it worked out for them against Perth, but it's going to be interesting to see how they go against those teams that are a bit higher in the ladder and
then make it harder for them,
playing a bit better.
CJ Bruton made a lot of changes as well. For a lot of his coaching tenure, it seems like he's wanted to try to make his players happy. So sometimes he plays them because he feels like he has to play them. That didn't happen on Saturday night. He shortened his rotation. He only played 8 players for the entire game. Everyone that hit the court played at least 16 minutes. So he trusted those 8 players, and that didn't include Trenton Flowers, Nick Marshall, Toe Smith-Milner, Rasmussen and Alex Starling, who all didn't hit the court at all, but it worked for them because everyone out there knew their role, knew what they had to do. Even Mitch McCarron didn't play down the stretch, so it put a lot of faith in the guys that he had out there. It worked for him. Does that take a lot of guts for a coach with in fairness, his career on the line to trust in those 8 players.
Oh, it does, but I also think that it's all well and good to say, we've got this deep team and, everyone can play, but as we've seen with these guys, the deeper you go into the bench, like, the more you fall off, right?
Yeah.
And then it gives those main players, they don't get into their rhythm. Honestly, it seems like some of them spit in the dummy when they come out and all that. Realistically, I think the best thing that they did was shorten the playing rotation, right? And we obviously saw that. And it's obviously going to change from week to week and even like game to game, depending on who you're playing. Some nights your matchups are going to be different and you're going to have to play some of these other guys. But just because they're on the roster doesn't mean they have to play. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the boys on the squad have come in and played and not really given a whole lot. That's something that it needs to happen at this level. It's only a 40-minute game. It's short now. You don't have that almost extra quarter to be able to play with.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like the NBA where you have 82 games. It's such a shorter season and every game matters. So I would suspect that we see a shorter rotation from these guys moving forward. But again, if the others are starting to play well, I think they need to step up. You do.
Yeah. It's a fascinating one with Adelaide. I mean, they did bounce back. They did look good, but we won't know until we see them play this weekend. But how much do you think they actually did improve, or how much did Perth make them look good? Because, I mean, they dominated the rebounding count again, 51-40, 54 points to 32 in the paint. What's the balance between they looked good, but they might have been allowed to look good?
It's somewhere in the middle there. I think they played easily their best game of the season. You could see that they shared the ball more. Their focuses were on getting certain people the ball, and
they actually looked desperate for the first time this season too.
They did, and I mean, you look at the other end of it, and you're right. Perth just kind of let them do what they want. Yeah. I think Perth right now are the worst defensive team in the league.
If they're not by numbers, they at least look like it.
Yeah, well, they certainly do. They certainly do. And yeah, look, I mean, I think it was a perfect game for Adelaide to kind of help try and turn their season around a bit, or at least pump some confidence into them to let them know, well, look, we can do this on the court. Why can't we do it every week? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they go this week.
It will be. And speaking of the Wildcats, we'll talk about them when we come back. Let's take a quick break and hear from Tap Touch, Cody.
Sounds good.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. I'm here with Cody Ellis, as always. These Perth Wildcats discussions are tough. Yes. Cody, we wish we could talk about them in a more positive light, but it's a little bit difficult right now. What's your dad's thoughts right now? He's sitting courtside at the moment commentating, and I think he even took in the Perth Glory game on the weekend. I heard from a little source that he was spotted at the Glory game with your mum. What's he making of things right now?
Oh, like most Perth fans, he's frustrated. It's it's certainly not the Wildcats everyone over here has come to love. It's a completely different look team. They're playing completely different. It's one of those things that when they were going through their super successful stint, it was always defense that they hung their hat on.
And rebounding.
Yeah. It's kind of the complete opposite of this team right now. And then, look, they've been put together to be able to put points on the board, but they're just not quite clicking or gelling at the moment. It's fairly interesting to see.
There's a lot of fascinating things about their game against Adelaide. They were playing against a team under all sorts of pressure at a complete low ebb confidence-wise, and they were the fresher team, so it was the only game for the Wildcats of the weekend. Adelaide had played 48 hours earlier, but like we talked about before, it was Adelaide that looked like the most desperate team. They looked like the hungry team, but some things really stood out. Corey Webster looked like their best offensive weapon on the night. Didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Up until that point, he had 14 points and shot 6 of 10. Ty Webster had a pretty good game as well. He pushes the pace. He makes them move a bit faster, but he took a knock to his knee and he also fouled out, so he didn't play down the stretch. Alex Sarr only played 12 minutes and 30 seconds. To me, he's someone that could have troubled Isaac Humphries a little bit more with his length. David Okwera didn't play at all. He's someone that is a former teammate of Humphries as well. He's got that little bit of length as well, and he's a good rebounder.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he's someone that was worth chucking in there to see if he could do something. Only, was it back in round 2? Ben Henschel was a match winner when he had 24 points. He didn't hit the court at all. We talked about all those things that Adelaide were doing, being desperate for the loose ball. That's exactly what Hiram Harris does, brings that energy. He didn't play at all. Jesse Wagstaff playing his 450th game. Started. Did a couple of nice things. Took a charge against DJ Vasiljevic. He only played 6 minutes for the entire game. What's on all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. It is. And Sarr changes them defensively a lot as soon as he steps on the floor. Right? You know, I spoke about Mango and Marcus Lee before about changing shots. That's exactly what Sarr does, right?
All he has to do is stand there, put his arms up.
Yeah,
and he's 7'5", isn't he?
I
His
think
wingspan,
so, something crazy like that. And you know, like I said, he completely changed their defense, right? Because he bolsters that inside. 12 and a half minutes. I don't remember seeing him in the first quarter. I don't know if it was till, you know,
very late.
Either very late or start of the second that we saw him. And I mean, 12 and a half minutes, I think, for a team that had a big man going to work on him is I mean, that's not ideal, right? We haven't really seen Aquera at all this year. I mean, he's barely played. Hiram Harris, I think, a tough one as well, because he comes in, he changes their defense as well. He just with his energy. You know, I think he's in the limited minutes he's had so far this year, he's come on and he's kind of done that nitty gritty stuff that used to be the key for the Wildcat. Dive on the loose ball. He'd, you know, be physical with someone. He'd, after a play, he'd, you know, knock a ball out of someone's hand or just that.
Very similar to Greg Hire, that sort of role.
Yeah, that antagonizer, right? I think is kind of the way to put it. And yeah, didn't touch the court either. You know, again against his old team. Ben Henschel for me is one that I'm just so confused about. I think, you know, all of the talk in the preseason about he's going to be the face of the Cats and all this kind of thing, and then comes out, doesn't play in the first game. Comes out second game, he has, I think it was 25 points on unreal shooting as well. Like, it was not on a ton of shot attempts. And, you know, I think it's the highest score for a Aussie in their first game and first ever to top score, I think, for your team. I believe something along those lines. And then, you know, gets a couple minutes here and there in the next game. And it has to be tough for those guys because they don't know when their minutes are coming. And like, I do understand, you know, we did talk about Adelaide shortening their roster. That worked for them, right? I don't think it really did for the Cats in this point. And
you have to shorten it the right way.
You do. You do. And you look at a guy like Usher, comes in, talks up, I want to be Defensive Player of the Year. You know, that's my goal this year.
Have you seen him show anything to suggest he's even a decent defender?
No. There was one play where I had to pick up my jaw from the floor where Isaac Humphries caught the ball kind of just off the block, right? And Usher was guarding him. I think they might have been in a zone of some description. I couldn't really tell because it's hard to tell what they're in. Took one dribble and Usher stood there like a damn statue, and Isaac just went and got probably the easiest layup of the night.
You can understand if you're getting blown by Jordon Crawford.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be getting blown by Isaac Humphries.
No, and I just, it's tough right now. It's really strange to see, and it seems like they don't know what their defensive identity is. And there's no one to, you know, grab the next person by the scruff of the neck and call them out and this is what we're doing, this is what we need to do. There's no one talking. It looks very quiet on the defensive end. Doesn't sound like there's a word there. You didn't have to worry about that back in the Damo days, right? Because you had Damo, you had Greg, those guys all yelling and screaming at you, and that's the best way to play defense. Be super vocal, because then you all know you're on the same page. They're all on different books, let alone the same page. So it's it's fairly interesting. I'm not sure how you change it right now. They've got a lot of work to do.
And then it's the guys that do have the ball in their hands in important moments. So this is nothing against Michael Harris, who will be a very good player in the league.
Yeah.
He's a talented player, but he's a development player. He's playing clearly John really rates him higher than Ben Henschel right now because he's playing. They play a similar role, and he's backing in Michael Harris, who played more than 16 minutes, and he finished with 0 points and shot 0 of 4. But in the big moments, he's the guy that's got the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I was dumbfounded from that last play, or last couple plays in that game where they'd cut it to 5 points, and I think they got a stop or something like that, call a timeout, advance the ball, minute to go, down 5, all right, need a score. Doesn't matter what it is, need a score. Kick it into him at the very top. He had the ball for the whole possession. Bryce was on the weak side. Usher passed it into Harris. Looked like Usher was meant to clear out and let Bryce come off the turnout. Usher stuck around for too long, so by the time Bryce was coming off that turnout, Usher was still there and then just started to cut away. Yeah. So that kind of ruined it all, right? Yep. Then Harris, shot clock running down, you've only got 14 when you advance the ball. Yes. You only got 14 seconds. Has to take a one dribble kind of sidestep contested 3. I'll admit that he is probably one of their better shooters on the team, right? He's definitely top 2 or 3. And that's fine, but he's got to be one of those guys that's either sitting in the corner, dragging in his defender to open up the lane, or he's got to be coming off a turnout, on the opposite side to Bryce. He shouldn't be the one with the ball at the top and then, I have to make a play right now. It puts him in a terrible position, right?
Yeah, it's nothing against him.
Absolutely not.
Shouldn't be in that situation.
It's a. I think next play he had to jack up another one. Yeah. Late in the clock because it got to the point where it's like, all right, well, we need to just get a 3 up. Yeah.
And there was another play late in the game where it's Christian Doolittle taking a contested 3 right in the corner. From the 5 guys they had on the court, he's the 5th option on offense, surely.
I think he had Bryce that one pass away as well, who was pretty wide open. Yeah. They don't seem to have any kind of direction at the moment, is what it seems like looking from the outside looking in. So, yeah, look,
it feels like they're not held to account either. No. Is that how it looks?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on, and especially for this club that's been so successful for so long, to have now a third year starting off the way it has, it's you got the Red Army kind of bit up in arms, and
they have to be a bit restless, surely.
Very much so. So it would have been a interesting week on the training track, I'm sure. But got a chance to go out and right the ship this week. But they've got to have changed a bit, I think.
We've never seen Bryce Cotton go through this sort of a stretch either. 2 of 15 shooting he had against Adelaide, 11 points. How much is it that he's in a form slump or a shooting slump? Or how much is it the situation he's put in where everything he's trying to do is so damn hard?
Yeah, look, a bit of both, I think. He's not getting those easy looks like he used to. But I do think that's because he's probably not getting things run for him properly, And I think a lot of that does come down to the big screening for him too. And this is something that I noticed throughout the whole league over the weekend, is that it seems like bigs are scared to set screens now. Yeah. A lot of it is just, I'm meant to set a screen here instead of, this is where I'm meant to set it, but my guy's over here, let me go headhunt.
They're very half-hearted with the screens, aren't they? They pull out of them very quickly.
They do. And look, a lot of that has to do with the emphasis on moving screens this year from the umpires, the refs. And I don't know, it used to be a nightmare playing against the Cats because they had these big bodies setting big screens. They just don't have that now. Keanu could be an unbelievable screener. Saar could be, just because he can be so wide. Even like Doolittle could be. He's a big body. Usher could set some good screens. Harris when he comes in, Hiram Harris when he comes in, set some good screens. That's what they need to get Bryce going, because he's being hung on to, and the way to slow down Bryce is to be physical with him, right? That's what's happening, but no one on the team's helping him get open. So I'm sure he's frustrated. I'm sure it's very frustrating because everything he's trying to do is a slog and a grind, and he's not getting an open shot. He's not getting into the rhythm of his game, where we've seen in the past, he gets those few cheap ones and all of a sudden, all right, I'm feeling good. Now those shots that are contested right now, they're the ones that used to go down because it's like, well, he's already seen the ball go through 2 or 3 times. he's feeling good. Doesn't matter who's in front of him now.
Yeah.
He's not getting those. They're just the shots he gets, is those contested ones. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough because you're right. We haven't seen this kind of Bryce before.
Does he find a way out of it, or does he need his coach to help him get out of it?
I think it's a bit of both, but I think it's also a bit of his teammates helping him out as well.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't think they have a pure point guard, and that's kind of
we've talked about that every single episode.
We have, you know, he was super successful, and he had Damo running the show,
and then he had Mitch Norton.
He had Nordo running the show because they knew what plays to get him going. You know, what to run for him, how to get him a good shot, and that's what they need to do because while they've got all this firepower, and that's great, Bryce needs to be the focal point.
I feel like everyone of those weapons are worried about their own game rather than helping their teammates get better.
Yeah, a little bit. And Bryce becoming Bryce again is only going to help the rest of the team. And, you know, I think it's silly to think otherwise. You know, okay, the 15 shots for Bryce, I mean, that's what he should average. He should average at least 15 shots,
sure.
You know, in this team. Yeah. 2 for 15, you know, that's not the Bryce that we know.
Yeah.
You know, it's on everyone. It's on everyone. It's on Bryce to start calling people out as well, I think. Obviously, we don't know what happens behind closed doors, but I think he needs to start being that because he is now. He's that leader he has to be the leader of that team because him and Jesse are the two that have been there through, you know, the past 5 years now, 5-6 years.
They're the only championship winners left, aren't they?
I think so. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I actually expected the Adelaide game to be his coming out party and him light them up. Yep. Didn't happen. Same. It's kind of very similar to what we've seen so far this season from the Cats, unfortunately.
Feels like they need an easy kill.
Yes.
And potentially that's what they might get on Friday night against the Brisbane Bullets. And no disrespect to the Bullets because I think at full strength they can be a good team and they will be a good team. But right now, without Aron Baynes for the next 2 games, and it looks like they'll be without Shannon Scott with another hamstring injury as well. That could be their 2 most important players.
Yeah, it definitely can be, I think, considered that. I think Shannon Scott, for them, with the addition of Nordo, was their 2 biggest pickups of the off-season and 2 of the bigger pickups for anyone in the off-season, just purely because of where Brisbane were and, you know, what they kind of needed in that veteran leadership, and we haven't been able to see a full season of Shannon Scott, unfortunately. No. And it looked like he was in a bit of pain with that hammy on the weekend, but he just looked more distraught than anything. I think he just looked upset at the fact that, you know, something like this has happened again.
And he's done it. He has done a hamstring before, so I guess once you've done it before, you know.
You certainly do. You certainly know when you ping it again. So it's not ideal. And I think he's been really good for them. He's been aggressive, you know, he's kind of run the show a bit for him, and I think it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see because I think Brizzy can be a really, really good team in this league, and, you know, at full strength, obviously that'd be tough. But, you know, 2 of your main players down now, it's not ideal.
How much are they missing Aron Baynes? I mean, I feel like he's the absolute perfect matchup in this league for Alan Williams. Without him, Big Sauce dominated them. How much are they missing him?
Yeah, look, I think missing him probably more on the defensive end than anything. I think offensively, he still hasn't found his feet yet, or they haven't really found a way to...
Or haven't put him in positions.
Yeah, haven't figured out how to incorporate him into their system yet. But defensively, I think he's a big key for them. Just that big body in there. And not just the big body, because they've certainly got big bodies in Ty Harrison and Rocco, but that smart big who understands the defensive end.
Especially when Harrison got into foul trouble as well. He had 3 fouls early in the second quarter.
Yeah, and not scared to call people out as well if they miss an assignment. So they're really missing him, I think. And not ideal, because then you got a young kid still in high school playing big minutes. Yeah. So it's not ideal.
No, and they've still got Perth and Tasmania this weekend
without
him, and probably without Scott. The biggest reason why I felt like both Shannon Scott and Mitch Norton were such good additions for Brisbane was to take the ball out of Nathan Sobey's hands more. And I feel like Sobes' heart's always in the right place, where he feels like him having the ball in his hands is the best for the team because he has that self-confidence. But I feel like he puts too much pressure on himself to be the guy that has to make the play, and then he drives or takes some bad shots, and it doesn't always lead to good things with the games on the line. But having Shannon Scott there and having Mitch Jordon there was supposed to take the ball out of his hands more and have guys create for him. He could be such a good player if he's got other guys creating for him. Now that Shannon Scott's out, do you feel like Sobes will feel like he needs to do even more?
Oh, I think so. And I think he has to. Honestly, I'm sure it's been a bit of a relearning curve for Sobes, because in the past couple of years he's had to be that guy that's like, all right, give me the ball, because there's really not been a whole lot of other options for him. And I mean, we've seen him be, MVP contender almost for a couple of years, and his game is very well suited to the league. I think adding Shannon Scott and Nordo was perfect for him, and I think we saw it in the first couple of games where it just looked like he came out more relaxed, and I think that's where he's at his best. Having those guys run plays for him, get him, a little backdoor dunk or, something like that. Yeah, with Shannon Scott out, he's going to have the ball in his hand more. And you're right. I think, Nordo's obviously going to have to step up and play some bigger minutes now. But yeah, look, Sobes needs to be their focal point because he is. He's their best player on that team. But hopefully they can still figure it out with Scott on the sideline a bit.
We'll get to our preview shortly, and I'll ask you about Mitch Jordon coming back to Perth and potentially even starting now, which is a nice little bit of synergy for him. Before we take another break, let's see if anything else jumped out that we haven't touched on. We've touched on a lot already out of round 4, Cody, but the round started back last Thursday night, as we've talked about, the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix beating the Adelaide 36ers 102-85. Then probably not as emphatic as we thought, but still a pretty comfortable win for Melbourne United against the Illawarra Hawks, 101-91. Then we saw on Saturday Southeast Melbourne Phoenix beating up on the Brisbane Bullets 96-73, and then Adelaide 36ers over the Perth Wildcats 89-78. Then 2 games on Sunday. Melbourne United against the New Zealand Breakers, in fairness, an exhausted New Zealand Breakers by the end, 97-88, and then the Tasmania JackJumpers 105-95 against the Sydney Kings. We've touched on most of those, but anything that we've missed that you might want to mention, Cody?
Look, probably a couple of things. Just Melbourne kind of doing what it takes to get it done.
Without
nothing,
Delhi.
Nothing emphatic about it, like you said, against the Hawks. Hawks kind of stuck around and kept with them for a bit, and then just the experience and the depth and the quality of players that Melbourne have just kind of got them over the line at the end there. And then against New Zealand, similar thing. I think tough on the back of a double, but no excuses against a team that's come from the other side of the world. So,
what about Ian Clark and Chris Golding? They went 8 of 10 from 3 between.
Yeah, they were unreal, and just timely shots. Just hit some big shots, and Clark in the corner just to blow it back out to 10 points with I think a minute and a half to go, just to seal it was huge. But I think the turning point in that one was I think it was probably 3 or 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Shea Illy steal at half court to a Huck Porty dunk that just kind of changed the momentum, because it seemed like New Zealand were making a push back at them. And surprise, Shea Illy making a big play. But no, look, I think they're just doing what it takes to get it done. And the thing I love about them is they share the ball so well. It doesn't matter who's scoring. One night Goulding could be the one lighting it up. They find him, right? Another night it could be Clark lighting up. They find him. If Huck Porty's got a good matchup, all right, let's feed him. Let's go to work. I think.
And they're leaning back in Bilal Chul now too.
Yeah, and he kind of found his feet a bit again.
Yeah.
I think he had 16 against New Zealand. Yeah. He's you add him in and it's tough. Hopefully Delhi can get back soon and really get that thing rolling, because they're obviously the team to beat.
You're right. It's their depth, isn't it? And the willingness to share. We talked about with the Wildcats that they've got a similar depth, but maybe they don't share it. But in both of these games, Melbourne had 6 guys scoring in double figures.
Yeah, and that's how do you guard that?
Yeah,
it's one of those things. It's all well and good to be, to have a stud that's going to score, 25 a game. But if no one else can score above 10, then you're in trouble. They've got pretty much 1 through 12 can freaking score in double digits at any given night. So. Quite the opposite of some of the teams we've spoken about, and shortening their rotations. I think Dean has that advantage of, I can put anyone in and they'll play their role, and if not, then I'll drag them, and that's fine because we've got someone else that can step up and play.
Absolutely. All right, Cody, let's take another deep breath. When we come back, let's turn our attention to round 5 in the NBL.
Jeez.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's basketball hustling. Is it hard to believe that we're talking about round 5 already, Cody?
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. Actually, yeah, it's pretty wild, really.
All right, let's get stuck into it. So we're here thanks to Tap Touch. So head to the Tap Touch app or taptouch.com.au, and our job is to try and help you find some winners, Cody. So let's do our best. Starts with a doubleheader on Thursday night. This is a tough one to predict. So the New Zealand Breakers finally getting home. They would have only had 3 nights to sleep in their own beds before having to hit the court again and play host to the Adelaide 36ers, who I'm fascinated to find out if they actually have turned a corner or if the Perth Wildcats made them look better than they might be.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And look, I think New Zealand is probably ahead of where I thought they would be at this point of the year.
It's funny, even though they lost to Melbourne, there's a lot to like about what they did.
No, they did. They looked really good, and especially coming off that long trip from the States. So I expect Adelaide to have turned a corner for sure, but I think that New Zealand is probably just that bit too good for them at the moment, and certainly with them being back home, I think the Breakers fans will be there and nice and loud for them.
It's been a long wait for them, and it's also been a long wait for the Cairns Taipans, who are back in action on Thursday night. They're in Wollongong. They haven't played since October 7 in the NBL, obviously 2 nights to forget against their NBA opponents, but they were never close to full strength, so we can't take too much out of it. But the Illawarra Hawks hosting the Cairns Taipans, very interesting one.
Yeah, look, we saw the Hawks kind of, I guess, hold their own against Melbourne. Obviously, still got a heck of a lot to improve on, but I think they had a better game against Melbourne. Cairns, I think, obviously, like you said, 2 games to forget over in the States for them, unfortunately, but goodness me, were they underhanded.
Yes.
Having to get Alfred Payton in, which was really good for them. I think a bit of veteran leadership would have been good for them. But look, hopefully they're close to full strength.
Hopefully we see Armstrong for the first time in the NBL. Hopefully McCall's healthy, and I assume he's now a father as well. I think that part of his trip back to the US, so hopefully he's on a high from that, but hopefully the big fellas, Meninga and Wardenberg, are good to go too. Yeah,
well, it wasn't good that we saw Armstrong in a boot over in the States, and hopefully that was just, being a bit cautious and getting ahead of things. But
they really don't have a point guard without him.
No, they don't. And look, I do think it's going to be a tough one. This will probably be a bit closer than I would have originally said, but I think...
Is it at a point where it's a must-win game for the Hawks?
Well, it is. It has to be. Cairns, I think, even though they've only played, 2 or 3 games. Three games. I think it's sitting in that top 4. Sitting in 4th.
Yeah, they're 2 and 1.
Yeah, look, which is, a bit skewed for the time being. But, look, it's an absolute must-win for the Hawks, and they're sitting 1 and 4 right now, and I think if they lose this, and if they don't at least show some signs of...
We've got Melbourne on Sunday afterwards.
I know, some sort of positives. It's could be interesting to see what happens in that group and whether the coaching staff sticks around.
Well, there we go. We'll wait and see. Friday night, 2 more games. These are 2 big games for all 4 clubs involved. Firstly, at the top end of the standings, we've got the Tasmania JackJumpers and Melbourne United, and I'm sure Melbourne hasn't forgotten what happened in that last quarter, last time the 2 teams played. But for whatever reason, JackJumpers seem to have a bit of the wood over United.
Yeah, they do a little bit. It's it's one of those things that they slow the game down to a certain tempo that I think Melbourne doesn't necessarily enjoy playing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, with the firepower they have this year, it shouldn't be an issue too much. But I still think without kind of that leadership of Delhi out there, it does hurt them a little bit. This is set up to be a wicked game, so I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to go with Tassie on this one, I think.
So many matchups that immediately spring to mind. You got Illy and Crawford in the backcourt. You got Marcus Lee against his old team, so he'll come up against both Lual Chul and and Huck Porty. You got someone like Doyle up against Golding. You got Clark against someone like a Drimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of fascinating matchups. Even probably Jack McVeigh and Luke Travers match up a fair bit.
Yeah, it's going to be, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this one because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Different end of the scale, the Perth Wildcats and the Brisbane Bullets. We talk about must-win games. This is a must-win game for the Wildcats. No excuses in this game. Coming up against a Bullets team likely without Shannon Scott, absolutely without Aron Baynes. Brisbane have struggled at RAC Arena traditionally. The Wildcats will be celebrating the 450th game of Jesse Wagstaff.
Mm-hmm.
This is as must-win a game as you can get.
Yeah, it really is for both teams.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough one. I think there's going to be lots of hype around Jesse's 450th, and that's an unbelievable feat. Just to be able to play that many games in general is awesome. But with the resume he's put together, is like he's second to none. Really, it's so impressive. So there'll be a lot of hype around this game. I think the Red Army will come out in force. If not to watch the game, but just to get around Jesse more than anything. I think so. Hopefully the Cats can figure it out and get up for him. They've kind of gotten lucky in the fact that they're running into a wounded Brisbane team, I think. And, if there was ever a game that they could just free swing at, this would probably be it.
Yeah.
I'd expect there'd be no Shannon Scott and obviously no Baynes still. Nordo's first game back at REC.
I want to ask you about that. Without Scott, does he start?
I think he has to.
Yeah.
I really think he has to. Which I think is good for them. I think it's good for them and it's good for Nordo. And
he'll get right up in the grill of Bryce from the start.
He certainly will. He certainly will. So it's going to be an interesting one. I do think the Cats get it because Brisbane. It's not been a happy stomping ground for Brisbane over this way in the West, especially when they're a bit depleted at the moment.
What will the emotions be like for Nordo? Do you think coming back here for the first time?
Oh, look, he's too level-headed to let it really affect him, I think. And look, I'm sure
he won't get booed though, really, like Travis did.
I hope not. Yeah. If anything, he deserves a bloody round of applause. For what happened last year and what he went through, and how positive he kept, and the professionalism that he showed, and which to me is not the least bit surprising with a guy like Nordo. So I think the best thing for him is starting. So he's not sitting on the bench with those nervous jitters. But he'll do all he can to get them over the line, and it'll be a fun one for him, I'm sure.
2 more games on Saturday, Cody. Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, a bit of time to freshen up, but also with some momentum now, the way they've been playing, and hopefully at full strength. I know there's a little bit of a doubt over Will Cummins, I think, but hopefully they're close to full strength. Up against New Zealand Breakers, who, boy, they get home for 3 nights, and then they've got to head straight back to Melbourne on Friday. Yeah. So it's tough for them.
It is tough for them, but that's part of going over to the States is you got to come back and make up for those games, right? So I think Southeast are looking really good right now, and slotting Alan Williams back into that lineup was huge for them. I reckon they get this one. Well, they'll certainly be the fresher team coming into it. But again, another game with some pretty cool matchups that I think is going to be fun to watch. So,
did Cheatham try to stop Big Sauce?
I think so. I think so.
Or does Mango start there?
I don't know. It's a tough one, right? Because I'm sure Mango will probably start there just for that extra bit of length.
Yeah.
But Sauce is so good at drawing a foul, so it's going to be an interesting one to see.
Speaking of matchups, I mean, Creek and Delaney have had a long-standing sort of rivalry over their careers. This will be their first time playing since Finn's come back into the league too.
Yeah, and look, Finn didn't look overly great the other night.
No, still working back from a torn groin, which will take a bit of time.
Definitely, he looked a bit all over the place, not really sure what or where to go, and look, he's going to work his way in, and once he gets full strength and understands his role and what is needed of him, he's going to change that team.
Is it just me, or does he look strange in a number 70 jersey?
Yeah, it looks weird. It looks very strange. It does look very strange. So no, look, hopefully he can get back to form, as much as possible. But it's good to have him back in the league.
Second up on Saturday, rematch from the playoffs last year. The Cairns Taipans, their first home game since coming back, up against the Sydney Kings, and I think just, at least from a storyline perspective, let's hope DJ Hogue is there for his first game for the Kings up against his old team.
Yeah, and look, from everything we're reading, it sounds like he will be ready to go. So fingers crossed that does come through. But yeah, look, interesting game. I think Sydney are just too good, especially you throw DJ Hogan there. Yeah. And look, he's ready to go. I wouldn't expect he gets big minutes. I think they'll throw him in there in bits and pieces just to get his feet back under him and his fitness back.
He seems like the sort of guy that's so composed that I wouldn't imagine he'd be that rusty either.
No, I don't think so. It'll probably be more his wind, getting that game fitness back. It's can't get that game fitness without actually playing games. It's a completely different kind of fitness. So, yeah, look, I think Kings probably get that fairly handily, especially with Cairns coming off a double.
And needing to bounce back from a loss as well.
Very much so. 2
games on Sunday. We had this discussion last week. Are you scared for the Illawarra Hawks heading to Melbourne to take on Melbourne United on Sunday?
Look, it's a different ball game going into Melbourne than going into Illawarra, unfortunately. Yeah, it's tough. Look, both of them coming off a double, on the back end of a double. So I don't think it'll be the prettiest game in the world. But Melbourne should get that done, fairly handily.
Last game of the round, back in Brisbane for the Brisbane Bullets against the Tasmania JackJumpers. Again, we expect Brisbane both without Scott and Baynes having to come back from Perth on Friday night. JackJumpers also coming back from playing on Friday, but it's not quite the same trip from Perth. What are you expecting?
Yeah, it's a tall ask to ask Nordo to run around after Jordon Crawford for after running around after Bryce. Yeah. So it's a tough double for those guys. But yeah, I think again it's one of those things that it's at that point of the year already where Brisbane can't afford to keep dropping games. I mean,
well, no, they're already 2-4. They've lost the last 4. If they lose on Friday, they're 2-5.
Yeah, and then drop this one. It's
6-game losing streak.
It's a long way back, right? And again, another team that's kind of had no luck with injuries. Obviously, Baynes not being an injury, but Scott being an injury. Look, I just expect that Tassie's probably got too much firepower for him, and then we'll get that one.
Last thing to talk about, Cody, before we wrap things up. News out of the NBA this week. We've seen, firstly, Duop Reath was waived, and then Jack White joined him, and now, as of we're recording this, Xavier Cooks, also by the Washington Wizards, has been waived. I guess nothing really surprises you about the NBA, but were you surprised?
A little bit, with Xav more than anyone. Duop looks like he's picked up a 2-way contract, which is good for him. Not sure what's going to happen with Jack White or Xav, though. Interesting to see that the Wizards signed Xav on a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I thought if you'd sign a guy on a multi-year deal, you must have had big plans for him.
You'd think so. So interesting to see that happen. But again, the NBA is what it is, and this stuff happens all of the time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these guys. I think there's certainly room for them back down here. If any of them wanted to come back, I'm sure they could find their feet somewhere. Yeah. But, I think, you've obviously got the G League there over as well, and you're closer to the action. If you get a call up, you can be there within 12 hours, not in, I'll be there in 48, but I'll be exhausted and I need a day. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these 3.
Well, I guess immediately we've seen Duop find his way back onto a 2-way deal, so he'll be playing in the G League, but he's there available if they need to call on him to play in the NBA straight away. It's probably a 2-part thing where the best thing for the guys is probably to stay and play in the G League and hope for a 2-way deal, because then they're ready to step straight back into the NBA. But the NBL clubs will be calling. I'm sure they've already received calls, or at least their management has received calls, because there'll be NBL clubs that would find room for them. Well, we know what's happening with Doyle, but what do you expect to happen with Xav and Jack?
Look, I think they find themselves in the G League somewhere. Purely for the availability and that chance of a call-up, I think. Yeah, you're right. There's definitely been teams reaching out to both of their management. Absolutely, there has to be. But they've got pretty big price tags now. That's the other big thing, and
any team that brings them in would have to cut someone to do it.
They certainly would. So, it's probably those lower teams on the ladder that would have to do it. But those teams lower on the ladder are the ones that don't quite have the same budget as the higher teams. So yeah, look, I do expect that they end up in the G League somewhere.
Hypothetically, if they come to the NBL, could you imagine Xav playing anywhere but the Sydney Kings?
Yeah, no, but we thought that with DJ as
Yeah.
well, so who knows? No, it's very interesting, right?
He's a different character than DJ, though. I mean,
Yes.
I would be surprised.
Yeah, look, I think so. But, I mean, it's a very interesting one because you'd fit him in, absolutely. But, you know, who would you cut? Whose minutes would you take?
Well, they've worked so hard to replace him.
Yeah.
It's hard to see how he would fit, but he's so good. I guess you would find a way. But it probably means that the roles of DJ Hogue and Jalen Galloway diminish.
Yeah, I think so.
And probably Jonah Bolden.
Well, yeah, you'd go with Jonah Bolden and even Hunter, who's having a breakout year. Yeah. And he's been so massive for them. So, you know, they've done well to add those pieces to make up for him. And then you throw him back in, it'd be fairly interesting to see what would happen.
Jack White would be interesting. If he was to come to the NBL, is there a team that instantly comes to mind? Because I find it hard to imagine him going back to Melbourne, because I don't think Melbourne would cut somebody for him, and they've done well to replace him. Without putting words in your mouth, you can give your own opinion. He's absolutely what the Perth Wildcats are missing. They haven't been able to replace Luke Travers.
No.
He would be everything that this Wildcats team would need.
Oh, I totally agree. I think, again, he's a guy that doesn't matter what roster you put him on, they'd be automatically better.
For sure.
But you're right. It's exactly what the Cats need. You know, that screener, rebounder, tough nut on the defensive end.
He doesn't need the ball. He can have a big impact without needing anything run for him.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what the Cats need. So, look, interesting to see what happens. You know, I think a team like Brisbane could use him as well. You know, he'd fit right into that 4 spot. But yeah, there's plenty of teams that could certainly use him. But you're right. If the Cats want to really take a leap forward, I think he would be the perfect pickup for him.
If you're Melbourne, would you try to find a way to fit him in?
Again, tough, because you got Lualichul and Huckporty and those guys. Again, I'm sure you could find room for him, and you'd bring him back in a heartbeat. And he would certainly have loyalties because of everything that he went through there and the medical staff that helped him there. So it'd be hard to walk away from that. Absolutely. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yes, it will. By the time next week, we might have some more answers, Cody. So we'll find out, and we're going to get plenty of answers throughout round 5. So hopefully you've enjoyed our discussion. Hopefully we've helped you find a winner. Thank you to Hoop 7 for making this show possible. Once again, thank you to TabTouch. Head to tabtouch.com.au or download the app and find your exclusive options there, Cody, which everyone can check out. I'll wrap things up there and leave you to let us know what's on your mind, Cody.
Yeah, no, look, head to TabTouch. Get around our multis. You know, again, you know, I said it on the Tab Radio the other day on last Friday. If anyone's got anything for us and, you know, wants to reach out, got something that they want us to talk about or anything like that, feel free to hit us up on the socials. You know, we're happy to do that.
He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on TabTouch.
Hey, Luke!
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff!
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch! You got the touch, you got the power. Got the touch? Choose TabTouch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.